This video will show you how to replace the front sealed wheel bearing on a Nissan Sentra. This is part of the front steering and suspension, located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. To do this, safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Now after completing that, we're going to remove all 5 of our 21mm lug nuts and then the wheel. If you find you have a hard time gaining access to the lug nuts, if you have a hubcap, you can remove that simply by pulling it out of place. I do not need to remove my hubcap. Go ahead and remove that wheel, we'll set it aside. Now that we have the wheel off, we have a clear view of our front brakes. Let's focus on the caliper. So we're focusing in this area of the caliper. I'm going to be using a pry bar. I want to come in between the caliper and I'm trying to get up against my rotor deep inside. I'm going to attempt to pry this outward, which would drive in on my caliper piston. Now once you have movement from this, we'll continue on. The next thing I'm going to do is focus on removing my caliper bracket mounting bolts. Now when I do remove these, I want to make sure that I'm putting no pressure on my flex hose when I hang this aside. Just a quick inspection of that first mounting bolt. Let's start it back in a couple threads. This will prevent the caliper from falling down while we continue on. Let's move along to the next one here. We'll hold on to the caliper, fully remove that first bolt one more time here. We can set that aside. Remove the caliper from the area. We're just going to give this a quick inspection. I'm going to hang it right off to the side here. Let's go ahead and remove that brake rotor. A quick inspection, we'll set this aside. And now that we have the brake rotor out of the way, let's continue on with the removal of the axle nut here. Now as far as this axle nut, you may find that you have a locking cotter pin. We're going to remove that. I'm using some cutters. We'll just give that a quick inspection. I'm going to set it aside for recycling. You should replace these. Now we can start removing that axle nut. We're using a 32mm for this. You're going to find that you have a washer. Let's use a magnet, pull that out of place. We'll use some penetrant in this area. Continuing on, we need to use a hammer and punch directly in the center of the axle. You don't want to hit directly on the axle. You could potentially cause some damage. Now, as you can see, I do have movement from the axle, separating it from the wheel bearing. Let's continue on. Let's start removing the wheel bearing from the steering knuckle. Now, if we look along the inboard side here, right along where our axle is, you can see that we have 4 17mm mounting bolts. We can see 2 along the forward side here. You have the same exact thing on the opposite side. Let's start removing those. We'll make our way down to the next bolt. Each one of these bolts will look the same. We do not need to worry about mixing them up. Let's move along to the rearward side. Same process there. So now I've turned it and we can have a clear look at the opposite side. This is the rearward side. Let's go ahead and remove both of those mounting bolts. As I mentioned, all of these bolts will look the same. Let's have a look along the rear of the backing plate. This is where we can see our ABS wheel speed sensor. I'm using a 10mm to remove my mounting bolt. Now, to remove the ABS wheel speed sensor, you might find that it's stuck in place. If that's the case, use some penetrant and some pliers. You would want to take hold of the base and attempt to lightly twist one direction or the other. On my application, this is actually already loose, so I'm just going to pull it out of place. A quick inspection of that sensor and we'll set it aside. Before we go any further with the removal process, we're continuing on with our original axle nut. Just go ahead and start that on a couple threads here. This is going to help prevent the bearing from flying off while we continue on tapping this out of position. Now, to remove the bearing, my preferred way of doing it is to carefully use two of my bolts. I'm going to be starting these in a few threads, but I need to make sure I leave it loose. Along the inboard side, I'm going to be using my air hammer with my socket directly on each one of the bolts, and that's going to start pushing the bearing out and away from our steering knuckle. So we're paying attention in this area as I continue on. If you find that you cannot remove the bearing in that way, continue on with a hammer. We're replacing the bearing anyways. One thing I would note is be careful not to cause any damage to anything you're not intending on replacing. Okay, so I have this broken free. We'll just remove that axle nut. Slide this off of here. Now, typically the backing plate will slide out of place fairly easily. You may have to pry it out of position. We are planning on reusing this. Let's just work it off of there. A quick inspection and we'll set it aside. There it is, friend. While we're in this area, prior to reinstalling the backing plate, let's make sure we clean and inspect the mounting area on the knuckle itself. I'm using a wire brush. Want to make sure we have a smooth surface here and along the inboard side. We want to make sure we have the bearing in the proper orientation. We should have two bolt holes along the top and along the bottom. Go ahead and align that with the backing plate. We'll slide this into position. The axle should protrude through the bearing. Go ahead and press that all the way up against our steering knuckle so it's flush. Now that I have that pressed in the proper position, I'm going to start in all four of my mounting bolts. Just slide this in here. Get those started in as well. All four bolts are started in. Let's snug them up and torque them to 65 foot-pounds. Same on the other side. They're all snug. Let's torque them down 65 foot-pounds. Continuing on, we're looking along the inboard side of the knuckle just behind the backing plate where our ABS wheel speed sensor would go. I'm using some anti-seize along each of my two circular ports, especially on the threaded port. Let's install that ABS wheel speed sensor. When doing so, make sure that your wiring is not twisted. After it's slid into place, continue on with your one 10mm headed mounting bolt. Start it in, snug it up. I'm going to torque this to 89 inch-pounds. Just double check, make sure that's secured in place. Now let's secure the axle to the wheel bearing. We removed a washer. We're installing a washer. Install a mounting nut here. Once you have the nut in place, go ahead and bottom it out. The torque for this will be 96 foot-pounds. To torque this, it may be easiest if you bring the car lower to the ground and use a pry bar diagonally past the studs, preventing this from spinning on you. When tightening this nut, you never use an impact tool. You could cause damage. Got the vehicle closer to the ground here. Pry bar's in position. Let's remove the bar. Now it's time for our locking cotter pin. It comes straight through the port here. Slide it straight on through. Make sure you peen it over. Let's continue on with some anti-seize along the bearing mating surface here, right on the flange. This is the area that's going to go up against our brake rotor. So now we need to have a look at the inboard side of the brake rotor. Looking inside this area, this is the portion that will go up against the wheel bearing. Make sure you clean any miscellaneous debris from this area, otherwise you may have a brake pulsation. Let's get our brake rotor in place. Now to help prevent this from falling off while we continue on with the caliper, let's make sure we secure it in some way. I'm just going to use a lug nut. If necessary, you can use a spacer. Now, let's get this caliper off the hook. As we bring this into position, we're paying attention to our flex hose. You want to make sure you do not have it twisted in a way that might restrict brake fluid flow. Essentially, if it looked like that. Let's get this in place. So I've got this in place. We have our 2 mounting bolts. We're going to start in each of our 2 mounting bolts. We'll bottom them out. The torque for each of these will be 122 foot-pounds. Double check to make sure that's properly secured in place. Now one last quick inspection in this area and we can reinstall our wheel. Since I do have a hubcap, it's easiest to install my lug nuts. If I just install the lug nut into my socket, then I don't have to reach inside. We're going to start on all 5 of our 21mm lug nuts. We'll bottom them out. Get the wheel safely on the ground and then torque each of these lug nuts to 87 foot-pounds. When we snug and torque these, we're going to do it in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Okay friend, we finished our installation. Now the next thing you have to do is make your way up inside the passenger compartment. You're going to pump up that brake pedal till it feels firm. Take your vehicle for a road test, make sure you hear no odd noises, no ABS light, and get yourself in alignment. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.